great demonstration of love for Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Mahraj, and his tremendous contributions to spreading Krishna consciousness. And one thing we should talk about is Maharaj's dedicated service of translating all of Prabhupada's books into Bengali, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's extremely important thing. And just to give you an idea how important it is, I'm going to read a letter from Prabhupada where he says, and he's addressing all the governing board commissioners, or the GBC members, in 19th of May 1976. He says, "Please accept my blessings. Over the past 10 years, I have given the framework, and now we have become more than the British Empire. Even the British Empire was not as expansive as we. They had only a portion of the world, and we have not completed expanding. We must expand more and more unlimitedly. But I must now remind you that I have to complete the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the greatest contribution. Our books have given us a respectable position. People have no faith in this church or temple worship. Those days are gone. Of course, we have to maintain the temples, as it is necessary to keep our spirits high. Simply intellectualism will not do. There must be practical purification. So I request you to relieve me of management responsibilities more and more, so that I can complete the Srimad Bhagavatam translation. If I am always having to manage, then I cannot do my work on the books. It is document. I have to choose each word very soberly. And if I have to think of management, then I cannot do this. I cannot be like these rascals who present something mental speculation to cheat the public. So this task will not be finished without the cooperation of my appointed assistants. The GBC, temple presidents, and sannyasis. I have chosen my best men to be GBC, and I do not want that the GBC should be disrespectful to the temple presidents. You can naturally consult me, but if the basic principle is weak, how will things go on? So please assist me in the management so that I can be free to finish the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will be our lasting contribution to the world. So the fact that Bhakti Charu translated the entire Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very tremendous service. And all devotees who have translated into their languages Prabhupada's books have done great, great service to Srila Prabhupada, because he says, this is the greatest contribution to Srimad Bhagavatam. And because of the quality of Prabhupada's translation and what he's done, he says, our books have given us a respectable position. Yes, it's a fact. Okay, and then he says that I have to do my work on the books. It is a document. I have to choose each word very soberly. So just see how Prabhupada spent so much time and energy down to each word so that it would be a true translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, obviously, Gaur Govinda Maharaj also translated the entire, all the books of Srila Prabhupada into the Oriya religion. So we see the tremendous sacrifice so many devotees have made translating Prabhupada's books, and of course Maharaj, Bhakti Charu Maharaj also. So now I want to read a few little things from Bhakti Charu Maharaj's Ocean of Mercy, and then develop these points. Okay, so on page 78 of Ocean of Mercy, Bhakti Charu Maharaj writes, Srila Prabhupada's stay in Calcutta was extremely busy. He knew a lot of people there, and many of them came to see him. One afternoon, a few reporters came to interview him, appreciative of his achievements in the West. Srila Prabhupada said one reporter, "What you have done is unprecedented. Never in history has such a thing happened. Within such a short time, a spiritual movement has spread all over the world. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spread his movement, but only throughout India, but you have spread it all over the world." "No," Prabhupada replied. "What I have done is simply due to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and my Guru Maharaja. They have actually done everything. They simply let me have the result." Srila Prabhupada was still meeting with several important people near the end of the long day when the evening arati began, and he requested that they go to the temple room for worship. I left along with the others, but then it occurred to me that although I could attend the arati every day, I would not always have the opportunity to be with His Divine Grace, so I returned to his room. As I carefully opened his door, Prabhupada looked up and asked, "So, what do you want?" "Srila Prabhupada," I replied, "I just wanted to be with you." "Then come in," he said. When I had entered and sat down, he repeated, "So, what do you want?" My heart was pounding. "Srila Prabhupada," I managed to say, "will you please give me initiation? Will you please accept me as your disciple?" "Sure," Prabhupada replied, "I will give you initiation. During the Gaura Purnima festival in Mayapur, I will give you initiation." With my heart dancing in gratitude and ecstasy, I offer my humble obeisances to my eternal spiritual master. So here we see a very intimate moment where, contrary to what's the general norm, Maharaj, or Bhakti Charu Maharaj, personally asked Prabhupada to initiate him. And Prabhupada said, "Sure, I will give you initiation right away." And he chose to do it on the Gaura Purnima festival in Mayapur, a very auspicious day. So this is an extraordinary thing, because usually, like for example in my case, I decided to get initiated without seeing Prabhupada or without having any personal association with him. Of course, after I was initiated, I had personal association, but before, I just trusted the devotees that had preached to me, and trusted and came to accept that Prabhupada was a genuine, pure devotee, an exceptional person that I would never normally have any relationship with. But by my good fortune in meeting devotees, I came in contact with Prabhupada, and simply by reading the abridged edition of the Macmillan Bhagavad Gita, I decided to completely surrender to Prabhupada and dedicate my life. So in the same, but Maharaj is even more fortunate because he has this personal experience with Prabhupada, and he's able to ask him personally if he will accept him. So the disciple, in the case of Maharaj, had ample time to observe Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had ample time to observe Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So that was the traditional way, where the Guru has personally observes the disciple, and the disciple personally observes the Guru. And the fact that Prabhupada said, "Sure," right away, he didn't have to ask the opinion of any of the other devotees, because he had direct experience of Maharaj. And the other point here is that Maharaj says, with my heart dancing in gratitude and ecstasy, I offer my humble obeisance to my eternal spiritual master. So the relationship with the spiritual master is eternal. And in the spiritual world, one is always under the same, let's say, authority of the spiritual master. One cannot advance without the help of the spiritual master. So, therefore, tat vidi pratipatena paripasnena seva upadekshami te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshibhi. That one, tat vijnanartam sagurum ivabhigachat. One is obliged to accept the spiritual master. It's absolutely necessary. Krishna accepted his spiritual master. Prahlad Maharaj accepted his spiritual master. Dhruva Maharaj accepted his spiritual master. It's absolutely important. In fact, it's probably the most important decision one makes in this life. And therefore, the relationship with the spiritual master is one of service and love offered by the disciple. So that is a direct reference to the quality of Bhakti Charu Maharaj's service and love for Srila Prabhupada. He gradually developed this intense love for Prabhupada, so much so that he was willing to accept sannyas at such a young age and dedicate himself fully, without any hesitation, to whatever Prabhupada wanted. In other words, samsiddhir haritoshanam, the highest principle of the Vedic Dharma, Varnashram system, is to please Lord Hari, or Krishna. But how do you please Krishna? You please him through the instructions of the spiritual master. And this is basically the prayers to the spiritual master, that my only desire is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from the lips of my spiritual master. And the devotee lives from the inspiration of the teachings given to him by the spiritual master. This is the essential quality of a bona fide disciple. He's very eager to hear the spiritual master speak about Krishna and Krishna consciousness, and is very eager to follow the instructions strictly of the spiritual master, and he sticks to his vows. The Diksha Guru inspires the disciple to maintain the vows of initiation. So this example of Bhakti Charu Maharaj is very good. It's very illustrative of the way to not only accept Guru, but to maintain one's relationship with Guru throughout life. And this is why he became such a great devotee, because of his attachment to Prabhupada and his dedication to following Srila Prabhupada. His whole book is about his dedication and love for Srila Prabhupada, which is a remarkable quality of Maharaj. In fact, the defining quality of Maharaj, that he had such love for Prabhupada that he sacrificed so many things in order to please him. And he's with him now also, because this was his life. His whole life was serving Srila Prabhupada. So, another important thing that I saw in the book, so he's talking about Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur, and he says, when the kirtana stopped, Prabhupada recited the Prema Dvani prayers, glorifying and offering respects to the Lord and the previous acharyas. Then he spoke about the goals of the Mayapur project. His spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura, had maintained absolute conviction in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prediction that the Krishna consciousness movement would spread throughout the world to every town and village. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had showed how one could serve Krishna even while living in big cities and making use of motor cars and other modern amenities. He had given Srila Prabhupada the mission to spread the movement not only in India but also throughout the world. And Prabhupada had carried on the mission with a broad vision, making all kinds of arrangements to attract different kinds of people. Now, one thing should be noted here, that Prabhupada received this mission from his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta, in the first 30 seconds that he met him. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also gave the same instruction to other devotees, other initiated devotees, especially sannyasis. So Prabhupada wasn't the only one that received the order, but Prabhupada was the one who had so much faith in his guru that he risked his life to satisfy his guru by going to the United States in the early 1960s, 1965 and 66, and making devotees and then inspiring those devotees to follow his instructions. And in that way, the mission of Lord Chaitanya has been spread all over the world. And the idea that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he showed how one could serve Krishna even while living in the big cities and making use of motor cars and other modern amenities. And he gave Srila Prabhupada the mission to spread the movement not only in India but also throughout the world. And Prabhupada had carried on the mission with a broad vision, making all kinds of arrangements to attract different kinds of people. Srila Prabhupada quoted a verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-187. Iha yasya harir dasya karmana manasajira akizalas babu avastasu jivan mukta sauchyate. Akilas vapi avastasu. A person who acts in the service of Krishna with his body, mind, intelligence, and words is a liberated person, even within the material world, although he may be engaged in many apparently material activities. This is a very important verse, and Maharaj explains that Prabhupada pointed out that some people might feel envious upon seeing the devotees living in palatial buildings, but that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that only the devotees should live in such opulence. Just as government servants are granted special privileges, those who serve Krishna should be given all kinds of facilities. Also, the Europeans and Americans who were coming to India to preach Krishna consciousness were not accustomed to the hardships of Indian conditions. In Mayapur, he was establishing facilities for their stay. Through ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada said he was combining Western brains and money with Indian spiritual culture. He gave the example of a lame man and a blind man. Alone, each is severely limited. But if the blind man takes the lame man onto his shoulders, then the combination of blind man's strong legs and lame man's good vision will enable them to achieve so much more. America, he said, was spiritually blind, while India was materially lame, but together they could spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So this is a very beautiful explanation here given by Bhakti Charu Mahraj of Prabhupada's strategy, combining Western brains and money with Indian spiritual culture. So, of course, India now has become very materially prosperous, and in some ways even as well as rich or even richer than America. But you see how Prabhupada used the white elephants, he called them, the white devotees from America. Well, they were white and some black devotees also. we call them all white elephants because a white elephant, it costs a lot of money to maintain it. So to maintain the white elephants in India, he had to make nice accommodations for them and have nice prasadam and so forth. And so he could combine the Western brains and money with Indian spiritual culture. So it's a fact that America is spiritually blind. Now, let's analyze that statement. When you say spiritually blind, but yet you have so many Christian churches, now you also have mosques, and you have, Jewish temples, and now you have ISKCON temples, and Buddhist temples, and so forth. So many, there's religious freedom in the United States, but then it's saying that America was spiritually blind, while in India was materially lame, but together they could spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So this is a brilliant strategy of Prabhupada, use American brains and money and Indian spirituality. So now how is it, there's so many churches, the churches almost in every block in the United States, or at least in some places. How come there's so many churches, but yet the American people remain spiritually blind? Well, that's because there are deviations in the practice of religion in America as well as in India. And these deviations are serious enough that people are not understanding what is the goal of spiritual life. So in America, you have what's some things in Christianity called what's the name of that? 1 second, let me just think about it. You call it spiritual. It's called theocracy. It is the wealth and material opulence preaching of certain spiritual leaders in Christianity, and that God wants you to be rich, and if you tithe the church regularly, even though you might not have much money, but you give a certain percentage to the church every month, and you pray to God that God will give you riches. So this type of economic development through religion, and that is, let's say, preached by a whole number of Christian ministers in their churches. And you have the same thing in Hinduism, where you have a whole body of rituals, the performances in the temples for economic development. And you have the same thing in Buddhism. You have the whole series of blessings for economic development. And in Islam also, there is this path of power and economic, opulence through religious ritual performances or blessings. So you can see that this type of spirituality for economic development has crept into Hinduism, into Islam, into Buddhism, and into Christianity. Therefore, what Prabhupada, he's combining Western brains and money with Indian spiritual culture. So the Indian spiritual culture, the pure culture, is Ishavaishamidam sarvam jatkinja jagatyam jagat tena tena bunjitaha magridha kasrasidvadanam, that one should not pursue spiritual life for economic development. Yeah. When Lord Chaitanya says, na danam, na janam, na sundaram, kavitam bhajagadisha kamaya, he says, I don't want any amount of wealth, I don't want any beautiful women, I don't want any number of followers, I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth, meaning I don't want even liberation, mukti. So, completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. So the Bhagavatam also is saying that the goal of life is not economic development, the goal of life is spiritual purity. So Prabhupada also, he used the wealth of America and American brains, and combine that with Indian or Vedic spirituality to create this dynamic movement called the Hare Krishna movement. So it's not that you reject everything, you learn to use everything properly in the service of Krishna, because everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, everything can be used in the service of Krishna. So this is Yukta Vairagya. That's by connecting to Krishna, you develop a self-control, and instead of using wealth for sense gratification, you use it for spreading Krishna consciousness. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai. So this is the strategy that Prabhupada used, and it's succeeded, and it's continuing to succeed. So you combine the Americans and the Indians, the wealth of America and the American organizational skills with Indian spirituality, you end up with the Hare Krishna movement that's spreading all over the world. And Prabhupada says, as we read earlier, that it is even greater than the British Empire. The British Empire controlled some of the world, but Krishna consciousness is being spread to every town and village. Prativite achayata nagaradigrama sarvatma prabhu haibimorna nama. It's spreading all over the world, every town and village, because of the strategy, the preaching strategy of Srila Prabhupada. So Bhakti Charu Mahraj correctly is explaining what this strategy is because of his close association with Srila Prabhupada. Also, he says, so he tells another interesting pastime of Srila Prabhupada. He said, I was reminded of an incident that had been related to me by a senior devotee. When Srila Prabhupada had returned to India from the West and had come to Mayapur to see the land that had been procured to build the temple, he had not stopped at the samadhi or tomb of his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, on the way. And some of his godbrothers had criticized him for that. When Srila Prabhupada had heard of their disapproval, he responded, do they think that I am ever separated from my spiritual master? No. He is always with me, and I am always with him. I am not separated from him even for a moment. So this is a significant thing when the spiritual master leaves the material plane, leaves his body, and it's devastating for the disciple. But this contemplation of the spiritual master and separation is even stronger than association with the spiritual master in proximity. There's Vapi and Vani. Vapi means physical association with the spiritual master, and Vani means associating with the spiritual master through hearing his teaching, and hearing his words and remembering them. So of the two, physical proximity or hearing the instructions of the spiritual master, hearing the instructions of the spiritual master is more important. So Prabhupada was always meditating on his spiritual master's instructions that he should preach in the Western world in the English language and spread this movement to every town and village. That was given to him in the first 30 seconds of his meeting with his guru, and reaffirmed many times in subsequent years until his guru's disappearance. So he says, do they think that I'm ever separated from my spiritual master? No. He is always with me, and I am always with him. I am not separated from him even for a moment, because every moment Prabhupada was using to accomplish the instruction that his guru gave him, and that is to print books about Krishna consciousness and distribute them all over the world, different languages. Bhakti Charu Swami Thakur told Prabhupada in a walk in Radha Kund, if you ever get money, use it to print books. And that's exactly what Prabhupada did, and is continuing to be done under his guidance. So that means that he's always thinking about his guru. He's always with his guru, and that he's never separated from him for a moment. So, therefore, Vapi is more important. Vani is more important than Vapi. Following the guru's instruction is more important than being in physical proximity of the guru. And there's another example. Let's say you have an initiated devotee and an uninitiated devotee. Now, if the initiated devotee is breaking the principles and the uninitiated devotee is following the principles given by Srila Prabhupada, which one is a sincere follower of Prabhupada? You tell me. See? So, what does initiation mean if you violate the vows of initiation and the rules and regulations which were given to you by the spiritual master and the mission that the spiritual master has given you? If you violate all that, and then there's someone who's not initiated but who is following all those rules and regulations and trying to accomplish the mission of the spiritual master. So obviously, one can violate the terms of one's initiation and break the relationship with the spiritual master, whereas another person, by following, can keep the bonds of attachment strong with the spiritual master. So real initiation is when you decide and actually follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. That means there's a real bond with the spiritual master. And that requires always hearing and chanting in order to follow strictly. So, another interesting thing, yes, this is another interesting point. Maharaj tells a story about a devotee named Kalyana Das, a second initiated Bengali devotee who lived outside the temple and worked as an insurance agent and school teacher. And he came to Mayapur to see Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada asked him about his spiritual life and also inquired about his wife and children. It was a sweet, warm exchange. Then Kalyana Dasa asked, Srila Prabhupada, what is my Siddha Swarupa? What he wanted to know was his spiritual identity. This idea, Maharaj writes, to learn one's spiritual identity at the time of initiation was a sahajiya, or deviant practice. And Srila Prabhupada's mood changed immediately. He became extremely angry, and with his voice roaring and his lips quivering, he repeated, "You rascal, you're Siddha Swarupa, you rascal, you're Siddha Swarupa." Finally, when he had cooled down, when Prabhupada had cooled down, but with his voice still raised, he told Kalyana, "Don't worry about your Siddha Swarupa. When you become qualified, I will personally come and reveal it to you." Now, why did Prabhupada make such a big issue about this? Because Siddha Swarupa, or one's, let's say, original relationship with Krishna, is a very confidential thing. It's not to be trifled with, especially when one is a new initiate. It's at the highest level of love and devotion to Krishna. So a newly initiated devotee is not at the highest level of love and devotion for Krishna. They're at the beginning stage of devotional service. They still have many anarthas, or unwanted habits and practices to purify, and it takes time. And it's only when the spiritual master is satisfied after a long period of scrutiny that the disciple is advanced enough to go to the higher stage of Siddha Swarupa, will he reveal how to do that. But the whole body of sahajas, or unauthorized so-called spiritual masters, give the Siddha Swarupa at the point of initiation. It's another enticement for initiation. It makes the initiation cheap and watered down significantly. So that's why Prabhupada got angry, so that he could tell, because his devotee asked him point blank, he said, "What is my Siddha Swarupa?" And this is a very inappropriate question, especially to ask Prabhupada. And Prabhupada could understand that he had become contaminated by associating with people from these unbona fide sampradayas. Otherwise, he would never have asked such a question. And that Prabhupada could understand that his spiritual life was endangered because of that bad association, and up to the point of asking Prabhupada such an inappropriate question. And Prabhupada became extremely angry, and with his voice roaring and his lips quivering, he repeated, "You rascal, you're Siddha Swarupa, you rascal, you're Siddha Swarupa." And then finally he said, "Don't worry about your Siddha Swarupa. When you become qualified, I will personally come and reveal it to you." So that doesn't mean if Prabhupada has left his body, he will never come and personally reveal it. No, Prabhupada is not his body, and he will come to the devotee in different ways when the devotee is ready to reveal what is the Siddha Swarupa. So therefore Prabhupada uses the aphorism, "First deserve, then desire." Not first desire and then try to deserve. So first deserve, that means after a long period of sincere devotional service, once the Guru is satisfied that you're qualified, and then he will give knowledge of the devotee's Siddha Swarupa, or their personal, intimate relationship with Krishna. And then at that point, one is put under the guidance of a personal associate of Krishna, either a gopi or a gopa, to be trained up to properly execute that relationship with the Lord. So these are all confidential things. They're not to be trifled with. It's not a game that one plays, and it's not an accumulation game. Now I'm initiated, next I want to be a sannyasi, and then I want my Siddha Swarup, and then I want this, and I want that. No. First deserve, then desire. Whereas unqualified people, first they desire and then they attempt to deserve, but in that attempt period, they're not qualified. They're not at the level where such knowledge can be revealed to them. So that was a very interesting pastime. And Maharaj says, I was surprised by Srila Prabhupada's vehement reply, but I could also see two things clearly. The first was that as devotees, we did not have to worry about our spiritual identity. We simply had to be engaged in devotional service. Well, devotional service is the ultimate goal of all Vedic knowledge, devotional service rendered to Krishna. That's why we're reading the Vedic knowledge and hearing it and discussing it. It's to come to the point where we surrender completely to engaging in devotional service without any material motive for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's point one. We do not have to worry about our spiritual identity. We simply had to be engaged in devotional service. Because devotional service is the goal and the way to reach the goal. It's the goal and the way to reach the goal. You reach the goal of pure devotional service by being engaged in devotional service, which is a purificatory process. And once you attain pure devotion to Krishna, you continue devotional service. Prabhupada gives the example of a Singer sewing machine. If a Singer sewing machine goes back to Godhead, what will it do? It'll continue to sew. Now, sewing only for the pleasure of Krishna. It doesn't change the natural duty or activity. Now it's only done for the pleasure of Krishna. And then he says, the rest would happen automatically, and our spiritual identity would be revealed by the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The second point that he took from this incident was that Prabhupada would always be there for us. He would take us back to Godhead, and it was just a matter of our becoming qualified. So that means that even though Prabhupada has left his mortal body, it doesn't mean that he cannot reveal himself to the devotee at a later date, because he still has a body, but now it's a pure spiritual body. So therefore, there's no real separation from Krishna and no real separation from Krishna's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. So these are two important points that Maharaj. So in other words, if someone is thinking, oh, Prabhupada is getting old, he might die at any time, I better ask him, what is my Siddha Swarup now? No. The Siddha Swarupa, Prabhupada says, when the devotee is ready, then he will reveal it to him. And it doesn't matter whether Prabhupada is physically present or not. He is not a mundane person. He has an eternal spiritual body. He can manifest himself or unmanifest himself at any moment. Okay. So then Kalyana Das was very apologetic and begged Srila Prabhupada forgiveness. After a moment, Prabhupada regained his natural serene and merciful mood and explained to Kalyana that when both the Guru and disciple were qualified, the Guru might reveal the disciple's spiritual identity. If, however, either tried to proceed improperly, it could not only create chaos, but also destroy the spiritual path of both. So there's a way of proceeding properly, and there's a way of proceeding improperly. The way of proceeding properly is not to ask for Siddha Swarupa, but to first deserve and then desire. So that's an important point for our spiritual life. So then, another interesting point. Yes, so yes, so another important point is that one of the devotees who came to Bombay, who impressed me most, was Swarup Damodar Dasa from Manipur. And there's a picture of me with Bhakti Charu Maharaj and Swarup Damodar Dasa. I sent it to you. Did you get that picture? That photo, right? Yeah. These are the two people that have helped me the most, besides Srila Prabhupada in my Krishna consciousness. When he first walked into Srila Prabhupada's bedroom one evening, escorted by Mr. Mahadevya, Prabhupada was surrounded by a group of leading devotees, but as soon as he saw him, he's talking about Swarup Damodar Maharaj, his face lit up with a bright smile, and he exclaimed, Swarupa Damodara. Swarupa Damodara immediately offered obeisances and then touched Prabhupada's feet. Still smiling, Prabhupada introduced him to Mr. Mahadevya and said he had been a Vaishnava from birth, but he seriously adopted the Vaishnava culture only after coming in contact with me in America. He is a brilliant boy, did his master's in chemistry at Calcutta University, and then went to America to get his PhD from the University of California. But when he met me, he gave up his career and joined ISKCON as a full-time devotee. So, again, Swarup Damodar Maharaj is a very exceptional person. He's a PhD in chemistry, and he was studying for his PhD at the time he met Prabhupada in California. So Prabhupada was taking morning walks with Prabhupada on the beach in Los Angeles area, and those morning walks are recorded. They're amazing discussions that are going on. Bhakti Charu Maharaj was asking really pertinent questions, and Prabhupada was answering them about science and about Krishna consciousness. And at one point, Prabhupada heard that some big scientist was coming to give a lecture at University of California in Irvine. And this big lecturer had written books about how everything is based on chemistry, and including the soul. So Prabhupada heard this. He asked Swarup Damodar to challenge him. And so Swarup Damodar went to lecture of this famous scientist. And when there was a question and answer period, he asked the question. He said, Sir, if I give you all the elements to make an egg, can you do it? He said, no. But yet he wrote a book that everything is made of chemicals. So he said, if I give you all the chemicals to make an egg, can you make an egg, a real egg? He said, no. So that was Prabhupada's brilliantly instructed by Swarup Damodar, and what Prabhupada predicted would be the answer was true. It happened. So they write books saying you can make, life comes from chemicals, and when we're offered all the chemicals, and an egg is not a complicated thing, right? Scientists know just about everything that's in an egg. But yet, you ask them to go and get all those ingredients and they mix it together, it doesn't become an egg. So this is Prabhupada's brilliance in defeating the material scientists. So Bhakti Charu Damodar followed Prabhupada's advice, and what happened? Prabhupada says, okay, he continues. Bhakti Charu Damodar quotes Prabhupada. Manipur, which is the state of India from which Swarup Damodar came, he said, Manipur is a beautiful place, Prabhupada continued, a valley surrounded by 7 hills at the tail end of the Himalayan mountain range. The king there became a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after he came in contact with one of the disciples of Srila Narottam Dasa Thakura, and he turned his kingdom into a Vaishnava state. He arranged for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas to come from Bengal and train his citizens in Vaishnava culture. That culture is still present in Manipur. Their dance and songs, cooking and dress retain a very pristine Vaishnava culture. From the way Srila Prabhupada was speaking about Swarup Damodara, I could tell how fond he was of him. He continued, I gave him the responsibility to preach to the scientific community and establish a specific wing of ISKCON for that purpose, called the Bhaktivedanta Institute. He is in charge of that institution. Swarup Damodara gave a detailed report of his preaching. He told Prabhupada that he had met a few scientists in the Atomic Research Center in Trombai, a district of Bombay, and that they were very supportive. In India, even the scientists were proud of their Vedic heritage. Prabhupada was pleased to hear that and asked whether the conversation had been recorded. When Swarup Damodar said that it had not, Prabhupada told him to always carry a tape recorder or take someone with him to tape. The conversations, he said, were important and could be used in the future. Srila Prabhupada then expounded on the importance of Bombay. Bombay is undoubtedly the best city in India, he asserted. 63% of the government revenue of India comes from Bombay. Calcutta is also very wealthy, Swarup Damodar suggested. Prabhupada replied, that money is black money. In order to avoid paying taxes to the government, they do not declare. So you cannot fool Prabhupada. He knows the reality. He's a Calcutta boy, so he knows what's going on there. Swarup Damodar reported that a few students from Bombay University had come to the Juhu Temple and wanted to study at the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Srila Prabhupada was happy to hear that and said that they should be given good facilities, that the buildings on the Juhu property should be utilized to facilitate the institute so that intelligent men would come and learn the science of Krishna consciousness. So the institute is still domiciled there. It's still functioning there today, according to Prabhupada's desire. Give them a nice place so that they may not be uncomfortable, he said. Give them nice, good food. Give them all facilities. Those who are educated scientists, they are accustomed to certain comforts. Therefore, they should be given those facilities. My Guru Maharaja also wanted that. He wanted to attract high-class individuals and give them all the facilities when they came. We can't expect that all of a sudden they should now live on the floor. No, that is not possible. Then they will be disturbed. Give them a nice place, give them nice food, nice facilities and instruments. You are all intelligent boys. Do it immediately. Construct another building, and that colony should be for the first class. So, Prabhupada's desire to spread Krishna consciousness through the scientific community, he knew that the scientists are considered like gurus of society today, and if he could get more scientists like Bhakti Swarup Damodar and also Sadhaputta Das and also other scientists who had become devotees, then he could have a very, very high-level functioning institute to validate the Vedic knowledge to scientific young scientists today, so that they grow up to be scientists that are researching with the idea that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the origin of everything. So that's another preaching strategy of Prabhupada. Has it succeeded? Well, there has been some successes, mild successes, but not the big successes that have been experienced or have been desired as far as scientific preaching goes. But there has been success, some success. Okay, so then another interesting thing. stop. Tamal Krishna Maharaj brought Swarup Damodar Prabhu, or Maharaj later on, in to see Srila Prabhupada one morning and praised the success he was having preaching to Bombay's scientific community. Prabhupada had always been impressed with Swarup Damodar's program, and he advised him how to point out the defects of modern science. Their main problem, he said, is that they do not want to accept the simple fact that life comes from life. Life doesn't come from matter. They are misleading the world with their claim that life comes from matter. Since their basic premise is wrong, they will never be able to come to the right conclusion. They will never be able to prove it. They are giving the false promise that they will prove in the future how life comes from matter. And this process is like giving a post-dated check. I do not have the money now, but in the future I will have money. We must accept challenge. Then we must challenge them and expose them and call their bluff. They are not scientists. They are a bunch of cheats. Well, this is the truth. And Prabhupada is the only person I've ever heard to say such things. One time I was stunned when Prabhupada was speaking like this about the scientists. And I said, Srila Prabhupada, I said, I've never heard anyone speak about the scientists like this. He said, yes, I can do this. He said, do you know why? I said, no, I don't know why. He said, because I know that Krishna is behind everything. I know this, I know this, I know this. Finger like this, and he was looking directly at me. So, yes, bona fide spiritual master knows that Krishna actually exists. Most of the scientists and philosophers today say that God doesn't exist, and there's no such thing as a spiritual world where there's eternal life. There's only matter. So these people are the biggest misleaders in society today. And all they do is give post-dated checks. They promise you money in the future that they don't have in the present. And of course, that's a pipe dream. Prabhupada asked Swarup Damodar how much money he would need to maintain the Bhaktivedanta Institute and continue his scientific preaching. Swarup Damodar remained silent for a while and then said he did not know. Prabhupada asked Tamal Krishna Maharaj. After a bit of thought, Maharaj said that the project would require about $10,000 a month. So Prabhupada told him to instruct the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust to give the Institute that amount every month. It was clear how much importance he gave to scientific preaching. So this is extremely important. Scientists are now the gurus of society. They do so much research and make so many claims. Actually, they haven't really discovered anything, of importance in the last 60, 70 years. They're just going on their past laurels. And therefore, they know that whatever they're doing now is a bluff. That's why it's important that the scientists take the lead in studying the Vedic literature to understand what is actually matter and what is the purpose of it. It's to please Krishna. So then we'll stop right there. Prabhupada gave high priority to scientific preaching. He was very appreciative of Swarup Damodar Maharaj. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj was fortunate enough to be able to see this, and he appreciated it very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.